Like my screen went dark. Jody, welcome to the Calm Mom podcast. I am so excited to have you here. I feel like we were already just like going off before we even hit record. And I'm like, this is so good. Stop. We have to hit record. Everyone needs to hear this. So thanks for being with us.
Oh, you know it's going to be a good podcast episode when you're like, stop. Let's do it. Yes. So, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to you about all the things. So yeah, thank you for
My
having
pleasure.
me.
So I want to start by, you came on here and you told me why it was such an exciting day. So share the exciting news and then tell the people who you are and all the things.
Okay. All right. So I'm Jody Carrington. I'm a clinical psychologist up here in Alberta, Canada. And I started out as a police psychologist, do lots of stuff with trauma and all the things. And then I just fell in love with kids and our understanding of kids and trauma. So I spent a lot of time as a child psychologist. I worked on a LOC psychiatric inpatient unit for kids for 10 years. And the hitters and the kickers and the biters, and ones to tell you to F off, those are my favorite. And I know. And then I met my husband, and we had 3 babies very fast. I don't even really like kids. I'm a much bigger fan of the people who hold them. So I always truly believe, like, if big people aren't okay, little people don't stand a chance. And so we had these 3 kids under 2 years because we were 36 when we had our first one, and he was so great. And then I felt so incompetent. And then we just got twins spontaneously at 38, and I'm on a 5-foot Frigal Ukrainian chassis, and I was not happy about it. And then I had 3 under 2, and I was having a near psychotic break. And my husband, my personal husband, who's like a food lot nutritionist, he wants to fix everything. He says to me, "I know what'll help you. Let's move closer to my mother."
Ding, 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 ding.
Son of a bitch. Oh my God. So I woke up in this little town in Alberta, Canada, which is where we live now, for the last decade. And my mother-in-law was just across the way, and it was the best move of our life. And I started a little private practice, and I started to coach hockey because we're a huge hockey family. I play it, and I still think I'm going to make the PWHL anyway. And then I started talking to teachers, mostly is where this started, and police officers, about like why kids are so assholery-ish these days. And I started just to sort of ask the questions about, not what is wrong with this one. What if we ask the question, what happened to this one? And how do we just sort of change that dialogue? And so then people were like, hey, could you talk to our superintendents about it? Could you talk to, yep. So then I started speaking, and then I wrote a book, and it became a national bestseller around, teaching and parenting. Is called Kids These Days.
Casual.
And then I know, so good. It was so good. It still is the best book, but honestly, every time I read it, I'm like, holy shit, this is good. And then if you watch me with my own personal children, you wouldn't buy the book. So I wrote that bitch when I was regulated, and I know all the things. And then, we lose track of all the things when we are with our own children. And then, then HarperCollins came to us after we had been speaking globally for a while and said, would you write a book with us? And so Feeling Seen came out a year and a half ago. And so now I do all the things. And then today, I told you just before we started, I just got off a conversation with the Today Show, the producer of the Today Show. So up here in Canada, being asked to be on a national U.S. morning show has just been like this mind-blowing experience that we're in the middle of today. So you came on, we didn't know anything about each other. I was like, guess what? I can't even regulate my own self in this moment. You're like, okay.
No way. I was like, yes, thank you for letting me celebrate with you. This is so awesome. I love it. Beautiful. Man, such big work, such good work, such important work. And I think we're all called to our own version of that. And I think a lot of times motherhood can feel at odds with all the big things that we want to do outside of our home. And they're both so important. And at the end of the day, I don't know if they really compete. Like one would always win out, but I think we often feel like, if our feet are in one place, they're not in the other. And that can bring on so many, right? The guilt and whatever it is. And not only we feel like we're letting our kids down, but then sometimes I feel like, man, I'm letting my clients down because I'm like, I'm not responding to this stuff because I'm at the park right now and I can't check your file or whatever it is, right? It's like, it's hard to do all of those things. And I'd kind of like to just start there because I think we're fed this belief that we should be able to do all of that. And I think it's this constant grappling of well, then is it me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I do it if everyone else can? And I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe your own journey through that and what you would say to the women raising their hands and being like, yeah, it's me.
Okay, so this is a conversation that I need to listen to as well as talk. Okay, so just know that like when I say these things, I doubt them every single day. But what I know to be true in my bones is
It
that
is, yeah.
balance is bullshit. We are the first generation of parents that have had access to social media. We are the first generation of women that have really busted the role expectations apart. So our moms, the women who came before us, worked very hard in secret, and they were the exception to the rule. And they wanted and knew they could be more. And many of the stories of our heroines, we know behind the scenes they did work that just was not acceptable, but they felt it in their bones. And I think that we're the first generation of women where that expectation to rise, we finally have freedom. There's no role clarity, but we have freedom. And the expense of role clarity is difficult, right? Because as human beings, we like predictability. We like to know, hey, what's the plan here? And when you say you can be anything you want, we also didn't realize that was going to be hugely anxiety provoking. And are we dropping the ball? Because we still live with our parents' expectations of us, our husbands, our partners' expectations of us, because we were all raised in the system. Many of us anyways, where, you are the PTA mom, you bake you do all the stuff, you stay very present, you understand how to clean the things. And there's the brutal force, the force of work that, sort of the man brings things home or is the primary caregiver. And I think that we don't acknowledge enough the weight of assisting that transition in happening, because I think, we have these expectations of women and, I make more money than my husband. That's really difficult for his dad to make sense of. That's really difficult for my dad to make sense of. My father, we had this conversation the other day about my brother got married and his wife decided to not change her name. And my dad was mortified. And he's like, do you think that's a sign that their marriage is not going to be great? And I said, Dad, do you know what my last name is? And he's like, it's Grant. I was like, no, I'm Dr. Jody Carrington. You know that, right? Well, I thought that's just your doctor name. I was like, yeah. So, I've never, I'm married. I'm happily married to Aaron for 15 years and I love him and you love him and all this thing is great, Dad. But like, so it's so fascinating, even in a very progressive, I thought, household where they're like, we're so proud of you, but could you just stay in the box? And I often on my platform, I swear quite often. I, sort of push the limits, which has always gotten me into trouble. But I don't care. But like, I'm just kidding. I do. But it's like this idea of like, can you be the things that we want you to be great? We just really love you to stay inside the box. We want you to be great and change the world. And actually, could you contribute your ideas and like help us? Because we need your emotional regulation skills at every table. We're going to call on you all the time. But also, did you put your kids to bed last night? And oh, what do you mean you're not there for the first day of school? Oh, okay. So you're so cute. So you're the CEO of your company. So nice. But do you also then keep everybody? So I think that we feel that in our bones at the same time as there is this expectations in our bodies, but also in our family systems, in our communities that I think are there for good reason, right? The intention is not to suppress or oppress. The intention, I think, has been we only can parent or run a company the way that we have known it to be true. And I often say this, we're playing by a set of rules that was established for a world that no longer exists.
Yeah.
And so when we can just acknowledge that, right, it gives us a little bit more freedom because you can't address what you don't acknowledge. The thing that we always want that has remained true is we put a high emphasis on emotional regulation. How to stay calm in times of distress. The greatest skill you will ever teach your child, the greatest leader, the skill you will ever have as a leader, as a spouse, is staying emotionally regulated, not losing your friggin' mind. The only way you learn that is in relationship with other human beings, right? Nobody can tell you how to calm down. They have to show you. So if you are a boss that is losing their friggin' minds a lot, you think if I just yell at everybody and tell them to get their shit together, which is really how, my father dictated his business. The first time I struggled with an employee, I was like, Dad, I don't know what to do. I love this human. Like, she's so amazing. But like, she's not showing up. And like, I just really need more from her. And he's like, you know what you're going to do? I was like, you tell me. You're going to publicly fire her. Sorry. And I mean, he's the smartest businessman I know, wildly successful. She created this beautiful legacy. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, in what land? He's like, you want me to bring her to the board table in our team of 7 moms and be like, all right, bitch, this is not appropriate. So what? So everybody else goes, woo, we're going to pick. And he's like, yeah, like sometimes you just have to. I'm like, Dad, you have never operated in that way. I have watched you. He's like, whoa, sometimes you got it. And I'm like, okay. So it's this interesting piece of transitioning in this time. And I have to tell you, I say this all the time, the future's female. I'm a mom of 2 sons and a daughter. But I think we are way overdue, not just because we need or deserve a seat at the table. We are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic, which has led to a mental health crisis. And the greatest skill that any organization, any family system will need is an emotional language. Somebody who can hang on to emotions. Guess who's better at that? You get one guess. Penises or vaginas?
Let me guess that.
Right. Those who identify as women, mostly because we've had much more access to emotional language. Not that human beings are exactly the same. Race is a social construct. We all have the same capacity for emotional makeup. But we're given more opportunities to stay regulated. We do better at it. And we do that better with our daughters than we do our sons even today. So I don't even remember the question, but that was a TED Talk. So if you need it.
So just drop your mic. We're good. Oh, man.
Whose podcast is
this? It's good. I want to talk about it because I think in a lot of that, like, we're so caught up doing all the things for all the reasons. And I think sometimes I just remember when my first was born, I thought I was ready before she was born. And I'd taken all the classes and like done all those things. And then I just got like slapped across the face with my lack of preparedness for the stuff that actually mattered. But I remember one time it was like 3 a.m. and I was just sitting, I remember I was like feeding her and I was just crying by myself in the living room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I am never alone. And I have never felt more lonely in my whole life. And I think it kind of goes to your point about like, we're doing all this stuff. We're always around people. We give our kids like underfoot every step if we're not at work, we're at home. And yet there's this pervasive loneliness. And it is an epidemic, and it is impacting our mental and emotional and physical and spiritual health and all the places. And I think sometimes we don't realize everything that underlies that. It's not just our pace and our busyness, but a lot of times it's, this idea of like the paradigms we hold around, what makes us strong women or weak women, what makes us needy, what makes us dramatic, all these labels that we just slap on ourselves. So can you just talk a little bit, I guess, about that? Just, I want to talk more about loneliness, and then I want to talk about the remedy and how we can have authentic connection that doesn't just feel like, the gossip happy hour social circle that so many of us like. I ain't got time for that. I don't bandwidth for that.
Honestly. Yeah, such a great question. And I think I'll start here. Like, as a psychologist, I think about this all the time. There's 2 rules to this human race. So whoever made us, it doesn't matter to me what you believe, Jesus or Buddha, the creator, or, the Big Bang Theory. Okay. Whoever created us humans said there's 2 rules. Okay. Number 1, I'm going to make you neurobiologically wired for connection. You disconnect from infants, they die. Okay. So that rule will remain for the rest of the existence of humans. 2, they threw a curveball. They were like, despite the fact that you're neurobiologically wired for connection, the hardest thing you will ever do is look at each other.
So true.
Okay? So humans, I want you to just go forth and figure this out. And what's remarkable to me is that in our lifetime, what has changed significantly is our access to each other. So if you think about the proximity, right? Like I get this whenever I do a keynote, I get people to do this. Like, so I will give them this piece and they'll be like, I'm sure it's really hard. I'm like, okay, do this right now in this room. Make eye contact with somebody in this room. And so I'm sitting with a group of lawyers, a group of teachers, a group of police officers. It doesn't matter. I mean, I do this with anybody, right? And generally what happens is they start making faces at each other. Or there's people who are just like pissed off that they got to be there. So their arms are crossed and they're like, this is dumb. How long is she
So
here?
uncomfortable.
But it's,
Yeah.
But the hardest thing we will ever do is look at each other. And we've never had this many exograms. It is estimated that our great grandparents looked at their children 72% more of the time than we look at our babies today.
Wow.
Because if you think about the square footage of the house that your grandfather lived in, and the square footage of the house in which we raise our babies, particularly successful women, right? Like I feel very justified in like, we just moved to a gorgeous house. And I mean, when we lived in our double wide, I was like, I knew where everybody was. I was like, are you kidding me? You know, like I'm doing a podcast in my closet. And then now we've made it and we've got this house. And I'm like, hey, I'm texting the children because they're in their rooms.
Wow.
And it's like the idea of proximity. You know, you think about the size of the beds that our grandparents slept in. My personal husband and I, we got a king size bed. I don't even know where the shit is most of the time. We've procreated. We don't actually need to, you know, we're good. You're good. We're good. Yes. You watch Laundering Money in the Ozarks and I'm going to learn how to make meth and Breaking Bad. And, you know, that's it. So we get back to the basics, right? We are neurobiologically wired for connection. We were never meant to do any of this alone. And our greatest responsibility as humans, as adults, is, I think, summarized by a Ram Dass quote. So he's a philosopher and a dead guy, and I think said maybe the most profound statement in the English language, okay? Or in the human language. We are all just here walking each other home.
Oh.
Nobody gets out of here alive. So in our positions of psychologist, lawyer, teacher, mom, grandparent, our most profound work will be in the walking. The moments where we're saying, okay, look at me. Let's talk through this case. All right. I know you buried your baby. Tell me about her. Right? That's our work. When our children collapse because we have to go on a 10-day road trip and they're like, Mommy, this is not fair. I'm like, tell me more. Tell me more. What's the hardest part? The idea is in the walking that it matters so much, right? And you can't tell your babies how to be successful. You got to show them. You can't tell them how to be, and so that's my constant balance of, am I showing them how I hope they will show up in the world? Am I up because I'm so committed? Now I feel much more competent at work than I do at home. And this is historically why men, those who identify as men, has spent more time at work. Because we want to spend time where we feel most competent.
That makes sense.
Okay. And women historically, I mean, particularly when we were the primary feeders of babies, we knew how to change their bums. There was much more of an emotional connection to this process. We felt more competent. And, you know, even I think about the baby days with, you know, my husband and the twins, and I'd be like, what are you doing? Jesus, come on, you know? So there'd be like, he's leaving at 4:00 in the morning to go to a feed yard. And I'm like at the window, you know, my lips pressed against it, going like, don't leave me here. Because I felt so much better with other people's children. I felt doing, you know, much better with research, with, you know, doing anything, standing on a stage, telling people how to parent, being on a locked psychiatric inpatient unit, some other kids telling me to off, than I did going home with like, oh God, you know, like, do they need Benadryl? I don't understand. Like, what are you doing? You know? And so I think that there has got to be this grace in this place around, you know, foraging, the capacity to not sort of consider ourselves as creating these humans and, you know, we're going to be empty nesters one day. We're bird launchers. And we got to show them how to do it. And as a successful, I'm so proud that our babies get to watch their dad be successful and me be successful. And, you know, the benefits to that we have to talk about. Okay, so what does that mean? How do we use our privilege? How do we step into this place of, you know, creating spaces for kindness and understanding that we have a lot of things because mom and dad work hard, but how do we give it away? that's where legacies are built. And so I think it's really like how you use it that matters, but it's a daily conversation that I
Mm.
have in my head about, is
Mhm.
it worth it? Will they
Yeah.
recover? What are they going to
Yeah.
say in therapy? Which
Yep.
they'll all be in, and how do
Yeah.
we be okay with that? How am I doing? What am I doing? How am I taking what my grandmothers, my mother, Aaron's mother, sort of went through, survived, didn't dream for or reach for, that I now have the access to, and I'm going
Wow.
to use it, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
the deal.
Yeah. I love so much in that. It's a cost benefit analysis, right? And I think it's a constant communication with our kids about like everything,
Truly.
everything has a cost. So let's just talk about what we think is actually worth it and why, right? And having these beautiful conversations.
So true.
I was reminded of the first time I had a hearing in my law practice when everything shut down after the pandemic. And at that time, I had
Mm-hmm.
a 1.5-year-old and I guess like a 3-year-old or 2.5-year-old. And my husband had to be somewhere during the day, and I had these babies at home. And when I tell you, like, I had my hearing, let's say it was at 10 a.m. or something. And I like set out the spread of I made a buffet for my kids with like candy and cereal and everything. I had like all the screens with all the shows. Cause I'm like, holy, I need 40 minutes. Like just give me 40 minutes. And I was so like, they're good. And, I hadn't done Zoom hearings before, but I didn't realize like you weren't all just in a Zoom room. Like different judges would put you in waiting rooms, and then you were just sitting there with your opposing counsel, and then the judge would just like pop into your Zoom and be ready for the hearing. And so my kids, like probably 38 minutes that they're like watching their shows, and they're just being so quiet in the other room. And then my baby comes and she's like, poop, poop, poop. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's like, the diaper's overflowing. And I'm telling her, I'm like, I can't leave this chair. Like, go get me a diaper and wipes and bring it to me. And I'm like falling out of my chair, trying to change her on the floor. And lo and behold, the judge pops into the room, right? And I'm holding like poopy wipes and poopy diaper. And I'm just like, Michelle Grosser on behalf of the plaintiffs or whatever I said. And like, she could just see it in my face, and my daughter's still screaming poop, and there's nothing I can do. But I will never forget her compassion for me, not only in that moment, but as a woman who had probably been practicing law with small children at some point, and a woman who was in her 60s. She just gave me so much, not only respect, but she spoke so much life into me. I almost started crying. Like I was almost more embarrassed about that. And she's just like, I just want you to know that what you're doing right now is the most important thing you'll ever do. And your children are watching you work, and they're watching you help people and do important. And I was like, I'm like covered in goosebumps now as I think about it. But I'm like, she didn't need to do that. And like, God's grace, like that could have just been some, petulant man judge that came in and had no patience for it. But I'm like,
Yeah, that's like, look at how
yeah. Oh,
unprofessional
yeah.
you are.
Easy.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, may I just
Yeah.
be a woman who like reminds other women how important it is and how hard it is to be doing both of those things at the same freaking time.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen. Amen. And I think, just to your point, like
Yeah.
be that judge. When we're building our communities and our careers and our podcasts, really be cognizant of that, because that one conversation, I mean, we always underestimate how much we impact people. And I think that, she probably never knows. And the capacity to even send her an email
Yeah.
today, Michelle, right? If
Yeah.
you can find her, right? And just be like, I was thinking about you today. You probably don't remember me. I was junior counsel. This was happening. You said these words, and I've now taken off in a completely
Wow.
beautiful direction. And I really think about that, right? And so like, that's part of this community, I think, which I love so much about your work. This podcast is really like, we'll remember it today, feel empowered, and we'll forget it tomorrow. And so when we acknowledge each other in this space, we rise, right? Like it's that instant sort of like, really, me too, because we're in this really weird place where we just get everybody's highlight reel. And I try to build a place where we look authentic, but there's also photo shoots, and there's also like my makeup's done, and like I use the family picture where everybody's like looking like they got their together, right? And then I try in stories to be like, I need everybody, but like it's like there is the balance there. But I think that, you know, when you're scrolling, like we've never had before we even pee. So if you charge your phone by your bed, I want you to think about the level of cortisol that happens in our bodies that didn't happen in our moms, right? So before we even pee, I am like, I just want to get some emails out of the way and like just really go through my day. Like, okay, so if I have this interview and then this podcast and then I got to do like not even pee. And so then this is happening and I'm going to look at emails and I promise you there's nothing in there that has happened since 10 o'clock the night before that's going to make my cortisol drop. And I'm like, for sake, I got to do this. And then I'm like, I'm just going to scroll for a wee bit here before I go.
And
just to
we
make sure,
know
you know,
this and we still
everything.
do it. Like it's just
like this, oh, look at Christine. That bitch is working out already. And this one's drinking the fucking collagen. And so then I'm like this even before I pee. And I like, then my children are asking asinine questions, right? Like, what's for breakfast? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we sit in front of our computers and, you know, in case we want to miss anything, we got these watches that are buzzing, cortisol, and then dinging, dinging, dinging. And then all day we're like this. And then at the end of the day, you know what? We don't want to do frolic with our own personal people. I don't want to see nobody. You know what I want to do? I want to watch
by myself
Dateline
in the dark with ice cream.
Yes. And you know what I mean? And then we're like, we don't know why we can't sleep. Holy fuck. Your body thinks you're going to get murdered. And you're like, oh, I think I'm going through the change. No, you're not. We're just not, or maybe you are, but we're just not wired for this much noise. And our capacity for stillness is scary.
Talk about it.
Many of us sleep with a sound machine. Like, you know, meditation is the farthest thing from my repertoire because I hate it. Like when I have to stop to think about nothing, I think about everything, which is really the point of meditation. But, you know, it's like, the most healthiest among us will rest on purpose. We will normalize naps. We will understand that if I'm going to be a fantastic mom and a partner, I need to rest. And naps are asinine in my farm background because you worked hard. But what we also didn't, what has changed significantly is Sundays are no longer sacred. Have tons of activities with our children. All three of them have to be in like basket weaving and hockey and soccer and CrossFit and fucking organic carrot growing. And like, we're just trying, you know, because we're like all the things. And so like, there is no opportunity, right? There's no spiritual practice that allows us to sort of like take a break. And, you know, we would Sunday was sacred one generation ago. Or Saturday or whatever your Sabbath was in you know, many cultures, right? And so it was like there was a break. The 40-hour work week is asinine because your clients can get you any second. We have not accounted for this. And our parents can get us at any second. We're this generation of people trying to raise our children and our parents. I mean, I'm doing this interview, right? And I shut off the notifications because on here, my kid will call me from school. My dad, who is in the middle stages of dementia, will have somehow gotten a hold of a phone and been like, Jody, how do you get to tennis on TSN? Like, first of all, where are you? Yeah. So how am I going to stay very connected to you, to my patients, to, you know, this absolute attention fragmentation and then sleep deprivation has made most of us so chippy that the burnout is palpable. And I can tell you it's not because we're bad people. It's not because we don't love our work. I mean, in fact, you can't burn out from something where there wasn't once a flame.
Yeah. No.
It's not the work. There's no correlation to how many years of service you have or the type of work. We're wired to do hard things. We have no script for resting this system, for dropping our shoulders, for recouping. You know, we talk about this. You see, if you've ever watched seen a toddler miss a nap, assholery-ish. Yeah. Yeah. So are we. And think about how many, since the introduction of the smartphone, the forward-facing camera in 2010, there's a massive decline in the mental health of our children. And there's a massive increase in suicidal ideation and completion, primarily because of the isolation and the lack of being able to rest this body, get back to our good, the soul that all of us have in us. So the answer to me is quite simple, right? When you're acknowledged, you rise. When we on purpose come back to these things, particularly as a woman that's going to change the world. If I don't matter first, and not self-care rhetoric, that's such bullshit. You can do all the yoga, drink all the kale you want. If you're doing that in a dysregulated body, it is a waste of time. The body keeps the score. And so we know this from the trauma work in particular. Bessel van der Kolk's work around his book is called The Body Keeps the Score. Many people reference it. And it's really like, it is about feeling safe with other humans that predicts our success. And that has to be done on purpose these days. Because if we leave ourselves to the social media, which is not social PS, it's very curated to what you believe and what you think to be true. You become very isolated in your respective communities because you don't have access to the things that you don't support or you don't believe. It means we become very indoctrinated into one way of thinking. And, as you step into this election cycle in America, what is so interesting to me as November approaches is just how many of us get blindsided by the success of the opposite party to ours, because we don't have access to any of that information anymore. I don't like anything that, one particular side would say. I have no agreement with whatever that is. Right. And so I remember when Donald Trump won the election the last time, I was like, are you, what? There was nothing in my realm that would have suggested there was any traction there. And then what that does then is it really deepens any biases that we have, right? The exposure that we would have to people who don't think like us, sound like us, talk like us, becomes so limited, right? And so it's a breeding ground, the perpetuation of racism, of, political ideals that, can't be challenged. And then many of the hard news that we see, we consume in isolation. So if a president got shot, if there was, 2 hockey players were killed, if there was, something happened, we would watch this together around a TV, in one generation, right? We would consume that information together. Now it's often alone in the dark as we're scrolling. And we are neurobiologically wired for connection. That won't end. So reconnecting on purpose is I think the most critical aspect of your work and mine moving forward, because we're not going to cure mental health. World peace is ridiculous. What I want is the capacity for people to communicate two very different ideals.
From a place of regulation and genuine. Yeah. And there's just such a tension there because, for obvious reasons, but also it's this idea that yes, like the level of stimulation and notifications is just overwhelming, right? Like way beyond what my hard drive can handle. And I want to be informed and I want to be discerning about where I get my information. And I don't want to have someone that just sticks her head in the sand, right? And is la, la, la. And it's like, and the ands never stop. So it's a fascinating exploration of like, what's my threshold in all of this? And how do I do it in a way that's just so intentional, I guess is really the word, where I'm protecting myself and being informed. And in this season, that takes significant effort and awareness.
Significant effort to come back home. And I think that's like the most critical piece. Like if I were to think about 3 things that I think are just so critically important at this moment, it's like really regulation becomes the so critical piece. And what I mean by that is like in this moment, like drop your shoulders, wiggle your toes as you're listening to this, right? Really be cognizant of dropping your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Because the most primitive response to stress is, you hear an email notification or your watch buzzes, you'll slam your tongue to the top of your mouth. And it's just a preparatory response to like, okay, ready. And so when we do this on purpose, I mean, honestly, put the word shoulders on a sticky note on your computer, on your bathroom mirror, in your car, put a notification on your phone that nobody else knows, but every hour it goes off during your work week. I promise you, every time you see that word or you hear that phone, your shoulders will be up.
We talk about it. I call them joy alarms, but they go off on my phone all the time. And it's just like this reminder of like release your tongue, release your jaw, release your shoulders. And then I have to do something that makes me feel joyful. Sometimes it's a stupid smile. Sometimes I give myself a high five. Sometimes I twirl around in my chair and I go back to work, but I'm rewiring my brain to respond, right? Am I going to respond in this way or am I going to respond in this way? And but we need reminders to that because it's not how we're conditioned.
Beautiful. And the constant, then for me, the second thing is really the constant reconnection to our community. And what I mean is your people, like, and so oftentimes we're like, okay, well, we have to have friends and blah, blah, blah. Like I want you to think about the 4 or 5 people in your world that calm you. And what I mean by that is like, they can kick you in the ass,
Yeah.
or they're your biggest cheerleader. Okay. So how I decipher these people is really like, I have 5 on my list at this given moment. And sometimes my husband comes on and off the list. So I have 4, but they're depending on what I'm talking about. But like, these are the people who like make you belly laugh, know your middle name. If a bra or makeup is required, not your people.
They're so
It's
safe.
like those
Yeah.
authentically, they're safe. That's the key word, right? And calm people, calm people. So it doesn't matter that, I'm not talking about the people that are just like, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. No. I also want you to know that, but also like, hey, you need to take a break here, or this is, you cannot do this. Right. And so I think that it's like really getting those people in your head in this moment, and, they don't even have to be alive. This is the truth. I mean, one of my people, is my Ria, and we met in our first year of college, and she always felt like home for me. We were so different in the way that we operated in this world. But every time we get together, we belly laughed, she knew me the inside out. And so I gave the toast to the bride at her wedding. We rocked each other's babies this late. And then I gave the eulogy at her funeral. And she lost her battle with cancer at 44. And she left Nevin, who was 4, and Mookie, who was 7 behind. And I know crushes my soul. But here's what I love about it. Mitch Albom said this in Tuesdays with Maury. He said, death ends a life, not a relationship. And I love that sometimes when we need to be regulated the most, it's really by, thinking about the women, the people who went before us. Who do we want to make proud, given that we still have the opportunity to be here? And I think about her all the time. I talk to her all the time. And I think it's like really sinking into those people and really understanding the importance of reconnecting to them, because whatever you do for your work, it's a job. You're replaceable. I mean, I love speaking. I love the books. I love the writing. But when I'm gone, this is gone. When I'm gone, nobody will produce this the way that I've produced it, and I'm replaceable. So, which is okay. So then how do we, really remember that who we go home to matters most? And so I think it's like that reconnection piece that really matters for me. So it's the regulation, the reconnection. And then the other thing is like, how do we get back home when we lose our way? Because it's never an end game. And oftentimes, people say to me, I've already done the work. Why am I still like this? Listen, it's not human, an end
that's
game,
why.
Right? So, right. Yeah, it's okay. We're going to have seasons that are going to challenge us. And the idea is really like, what are those places? And again, it's back to this idea of stillness. It's back to this idea of, give yourself some grace in this place. And also then, how are you giving it away? Because you don't need to start a nonprofit for homeless teenage moms. I want you to think about doing the next best right kind thing. And that
the next best right kind thing.
That's it. Small. Wave at your neighbor. Give somebody a compliment today. And given how low the bar is right now, you might not only change a life, you can save it.
Yeah. Let's not overthink this, right? Let's not overcomplicate it.
Truly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This has been so life-giving. I've so enjoyed my time with you. I want one more wisdom drop, if you'll give it to us. Something that you think we need to hear, that you want to leave us with.
My wish for you, my wish for me, is that we remember in this moment how much we matter to so many.
Wow.
If you only knew how important you were. I mean, if you could get, even from a work perspective, if you could get the top 3 clients in your head who you'll never forget, right? And the ones who, they remembered your birthday, the ones you wanted to throw a punch, the ones that made you second guess your career, the ones, maybe even the ones who died. I promise you, if you can get them or their families in your head right now, they think about you 10 times as much. In our works of service, we are woven into the trajectory of so many people's stories. And the fuel to keep doing good work is really acknowledging how special we are in our roles in this world, right? And we don't take that very often easily, right? We're like, but. And you don't have to publicly pronounce that in any way, but it's like in my quiet moments, I am just so grateful for this opportunity to be so important and to be such a role or a piece in so many people's stories. And I don't ever take that for granted.
So receive that. Just let that land for a moment, right? so beautiful. Thank you for the reminder and that encouragement. Because I think you're right. We do lose sight of a lot of it, especially when it's just like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And it's like, whoa, it's big. It's bigger than that.
Or there's always like, this is what you screwed up on, or you should have done this, Michelle, or like, where were you at this? Like, Jody, you should stop swearing so much. You've got this big, right? Like, got it, 10-4. But it's like, so much of this is really like, okay, great. All of those things are important. Critical feedback is how we grow. I'm here for all of it and any of it. But also, what are all the things that we're doing well? And, what is the impact we've made? Even if we have to leave tomorrow, what does that look like? And it's bigger than
that's the greatest motivation to keep going, right? Remembering how important it actually is. We actually are. It's beautiful. It's been so good. Tell the people where they can get more of you. Where are you hanging out? Where can they? I want to link your books in the show notes for everyone so you guys can have easy access.
Thank you. Yeah, drjodycarrington.com is the plan where everybody lands. And I would love your people to be a part of our community. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook quite a bit. We, the second season of my podcast called Unlonely, we're going to try to solve the loneliness epidemic in this next year. Launches in September, the second season. So
Congrats. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. Thanks for making the time. Thanks for opening up your schedule to us, sharing all your wisdom. So grateful for the work you're doing. It's really, really, really big work. And thanks for filling that need. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Stop.
I know we use Riverside too, and I love it.
I don't know. It's like glitchy on my, here we go. Yeah, I love it.